Hi, I am Sophia. Welcome to True Payback, where story hits different. Hit subscribe. Let's dive in.
The call came on a Thursday afternoon while I was reviewing oral argument briefs in my chambers at the U.S. District Court in Boston. Mom's name appeared on my phone. I answered on the second ring. "Elena," she said. "No greeting. Sunday dinner. Your sister has an announcement." I glanced at the calendar on my desk. Sunday was clear. "I'll be there." "Actually," Mom continued, her voice taking on that careful tone I knew too well, "it might be better if you sit this one out." I set down my pen. "Why?" "Sarah's fiancé's mother is joining us. Margaret Patterson. She's a district court judge. We want to make a good impression and..." She paused. "Well, you understand." I did understand. I understood perfectly. "His mother works in law," Mom continued. "Important cases. Federal court. Sarah wants everything to be perfect, and having you there would just complicate things." "Complicate things," I repeated. "You know what I mean. Sarah's building something real with David. His family is very accomplished. We don't want any awkwardness." I looked at the nameplate on my desk. The Honorable Elena Rivera, Chief Judge, United States District Court, District of Massachusetts. I'd sat on this bench for 9 years. Before that, 7 years as an assistant U.S. attorney in the criminal division. "Hey," I said. "You're not upset?" "No, Mom. I understand." "Good. I knew you would. Sarah's really happy and we want to support her." After she hung up, I sat very still. Through my window, I could see the Boston harbor, ships moving slowly across gray water. My law clerk, James, knocked and entered with a stack of motions. "Everything all right, Judge?" he asked. "Fine," I said. "Let's review the Patterson matter." He blinked. "Judge Margaret Patterson?" "Yes." "She requested a judicial conference for Tuesday. Joint case management on the Whitmore litigation." "The Judge Patterson," James said. "From the District of Rhode Island. That's..." He stopped himself. "What?" "Nothing, Judge. I'll prepare the materials. My family had always been like this. When I graduated from Yale Law, summa cum laude, Mom spent the ceremony talking about Sarah's new marketing job at a startup. When I was appointed assistant U.S. attorney at 29, the youngest in the office's history, Dad asked if I'd checked whether Sarah needed help moving into her new apartment. At family dinners, when anyone asked what I did, Mom would say, "Elena does something in law. She's very internal." Then she'd redirect. "But Sarah just got promoted to senior brand strategist. Tell them about the campaign, honey." I stopped correcting her after the 3rd year. It was easier to let them believe I was a mid-level attorney at some forgettable firm than to explain that I prosecuted organized crime cases, that I'd put away a mob boss who'd evaded justice for 20 years, that the Attorney General himself had called to congratulate me after the verdict. When I was nominated to the federal bench at 34, the youngest district court nominee in a decade, I didn't tell them. The confirmation hearing happened on a Tuesday. They were at Sarah's engagement party, her first engagement to a man she'd dated for 6 weeks. I was sworn in on a Friday morning. 20 colleagues attended. My family was at a lake house Sarah had rented. That was 4 years ago. Now I was chief judge. Appointed last year by the Judicial Council after Judge Morrison retired. At 38, I was the youngest chief judge in the First Circuit's history. My family still thought I was a paper pusher at a small firm downtown. Sunday morning, I stayed in my townhouse in Beacon Hill. I made coffee, read case law, prepared for the week ahead. At noon, my phone buzzed. "Sarah, Mom says you're not coming?" She thought it would be better. "Sarah, probably smart. David's mom is kind of intense. Very accomplished. You know how that goes." I stared at the message. Then I typed, "I hope dinner goes well. Sarah, thanks. Mom's making her osso buco. Trying to impress the judge." I didn't respond. At 2 o'clock, James texted me. "Judge Patterson's office confirmed Tuesday at 10 a.m. She's bringing her chief clerk. Standard case management protocol." I sent back a thumbs up. Then I went to the public garden and walked until my hands stopped shaking. Monday passed in oral arguments and emergency motions. I granted a preliminary injunction in a civil rights case, denied a motion to dismiss in a securities fraud matter, and mediated a settlement conference that ran until 7 p.m. My senior staff attorney, Caroline, lingered after the attorneys left. Judge, you seem distracted today. I'm fine. Is it the Patterson conference tomorrow? I looked up. Why would that be a problem? Caroline hesitated. No reason. Just she has a reputation. Very exacting. Some judges find her difficult. I've worked with difficult people before, Caroline. Of course, Judge. I just wanted to make sure you were prepared. After she left, I pulled up Judge Margaret Patterson's biography on the Federal Judiciary website. Brown University, then Yale Law, 3 years behind me. Clerked for a Second Circuit judge, then private practice at a white shoe firm in Providence. Appointed to the District of Rhode Island 6 years ago. Her chambers photo showed a woman in her early 60s, silver hair, sharp eyes, the kind of face that had probably never suffered fools. The same face I'd seen in Sarah's Instagram photos. David's mother. The woman my family was currently trying desperately to impress over Oso Bucco. I closed the laptop. Tuesday morning arrived cold and bright. I dressed in my favorite suit, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, and drove to the courthouse. The building rose above Post Office Square, all granite and glass, federal flags snapping in the wind. Security nodded as I passed through. The elevator took me to the 5th floor where my chambers occupied the corner suite. The nameplate gleamed, Chief Judge Elena Rivera. James met me at the door. Judge Patterson's arrived. She's in conference room A with her clerk. Thank you, James. I'll be there in 5 minutes. I reviewed my notes one final time. The Whitmore case involved a complex jurisdictional question. Patents filed in Massachusetts, manufacturing in Rhode Island, plaintiff and defendant each wanting their home court. Judge Patterson and I would establish a joint case management plan, coordinate our dockets, ensure the litigation proceeded efficiently. Standard procedure. Professional. Routine. I picked up my files and walked down the hall. Judge Patterson stood when I entered the conference room. She was taller than I'd expected, elegant in a navy suit, reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. Her clerk, a young woman who looked fresh out of law school, stood beside her. Judge Patterson extended her hand. Judge Rivera, thank you for... She stopped. Her eyes traveled to the files in my arms, to the nameplate on the door behind me, then back to my face. Chief Judge Rivera, she said slowly. Judge Patterson. Welcome to Boston. Please sit. She didn't sit. She stared at me. I apologize, she said. I'm just surprised. I wasn't expecting. She laughed, sudden and genuine. I'm sorry. This is incredibly unprofessional. But I had dinner with your family 2 nights ago. I set down my files. I'm aware. Your mother told me you work at a small firm. Something about being very internal. She was quite apologetic about you not attending dinner. My mother doesn't know what I do. Judge Patterson blinked. I'm sorry. They don't know I'm a federal judge. They think I'm a mid-level associate somewhere forgettable. The silence stretched. Her clerk looked between us, confused. How long? Judge Patterson asked. 9 years on the bench. For as chief judge. And they don't, she stopped herself. Collected her composure. I see. I gestured to the conference table. Shall we discuss the Whitmore matter? We sat. For the next 90 minutes, we worked through the jurisdictional issues, coordinated our case management schedules, established protocols for joint hearings. Judge Patterson was sharp, thorough, exactly as professional as her reputation suggested. But every few minutes I'd catch her looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. When we finished, she closed her files. Her clerk excused herself to take a phone call. Judge Patterson waited until the door closed. Your sister Sarah, she said carefully, is a lovely young woman. Very enthusiastic about her marketing career. She's good at what she does. Your parents spent considerable time explaining how accomplished she is. Your mother must have mentioned her promotion 6 times. I said nothing. When I asked about you, Judge Patterson continued, your mother changed the subject. 3 times. Finally, she said you were finding your way in a small practice, and perhaps it was better not to dwell on it. That sounds like her. Your father suggested that maybe you'd consider getting an MBA. A fresh start, he said. I felt my jaw tighten. Judge Patterson leaned forward. Chief Judge Rivera. Elena, if I may, why haven't you told them? It's complicated. Is it? Her voice was gentle, not challenging. Or is it that you've learned it's easier to be invisible than to constantly fight for recognition you should never have had to earn? I met her eyes. He understood. Of course she understood. When I was appointed to the bench, Judge Patterson said quietly, my own sister told people I'd been given the position as a diversity hire. That I couldn't possibly have earned it on merit. She said this at a family wedding to anyone who would listen. What did you do? I stopped going to family weddings. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I'm not suggesting that's what you should do. I'm only saying, I understand the instinct to protect yourself by staying hidden. It's not about protection anymore, I said. It's just habit. She nodded slowly. David mentioned you yesterday. After dinner. I straightened. He said his future sister-in-law seems nice enough, I guess, but that your family talks about you the way people discuss a charitable obligation. He found it strange. She paused. When he mentioned your name, I didn't make the connection. Not until I walked in here this morning. Are you going to tell him? Judge Patterson considered this. That's not my story to tell. But Elena, you should know that David's been anxious about meeting you. Sarah's told him you're difficult, that you don't really fit with the family, that it's better to keep you at a distance from important occasions. My stomach dropped. He's a good man, she continued. He asked if he should reach out to you anyway. Try to build a relationship despite what Sarah says. He doesn't like the way your family talks about you. What did you tell him? I told him to trust his instincts. She stood gathering her files. I also told him I'd met his future sister-in-law this morning. I didn't specify where or in what capacity. But I did say that she impressed me a great deal. Judge Patterson. Margaret, she said. And I meant what I said. Your work on the Alvarez organized crime case was extraordinary. I've used your jury instructions as a model in my own courtroom. You're one of the finest legal minds in the First Circuit. I didn't trust myself to speak. She moved toward the door, then turned back. I'm hosting David and Sarah for dinner this Friday. In Providence. I believe Sarah wants to discuss wedding plans. Her expression was carefully neutral. I wonder if your name will come up. And if it does, I wonder what I'll say. Margaret. I won't lie, she said simply. I won't volunteer information that isn't mine to share. But I'm a federal judge, Elena. I don't lie. Not even by omission when directly asked a question. She left. I sat alone in the conference room for a long time. Wednesday and Thursday blurred together. Hearings, motions, settlement conferences. I worked late both nights, avoiding my phone, avoiding the inevitable. Friday afternoon, James knocked on my chamber's door. Judge, your mother's calling. 4th time today. Should I put her through? Mom's voice was tight. Elena. We need to talk. I'm in the middle of. David's mother knows you. I set down my pen. We're at her house for dinner, Mom continued, voice low, like she'd stepped into another room. She mentioned meeting you this week. At the federal courthouse. She seemed very confused when Sarah said you work at a small firm. Silence. Elena, Mom said. What does she mean she met you at the courthouse? I should go, Mom. I have a hearing. Sarah asked if you'd done something wrong. If you were in some kind of trouble that would embarrass the family. Margaret looked at her like she'd grown a second head. I closed my eyes. Then Margaret said, Mom's voice cracked slightly. She said she had the pleasure of coordinating a case with Chief Judge Elena Rivera this week. She said you were one of the most impressive jurists she'd worked with in 20 years. I waited. Elena. Are you? She couldn't seem to finish the sentence. I'm a federal judge, Mom. Chief Judge of the U.S. District Court for the District of Massachusetts. I've held this position for 4 years. I was appointed to the bench 9 years ago, after serving 7 years as an assistant United States attorney. The silence lasted so long I thought she'd hung up. Why didn't you tell us? She finally whispered. I tried. At first. You weren't interested. That's not we would have. When I graduated Yale Law summa cum laude, you talked about Sarah's marketing internship through my entire graduation dinner. When I was appointed AUSA, Dad asked if I could help Sarah move apartments. When I prosecuted the Alvarez case, the biggest organized crime trial in Massachusetts in a decade, you asked if I'd seen Sarah's new Instagram post about her promotion. Elena. I stopped trying to tell you because you made it clear you didn't want to hear it. And eventually, it became easier to just let you believe whatever story made you comfortable. But a federal judge, Mom said. We had no idea. No, I agreed. You didn't. Margaret Patterson just showed us a news article. From when you were appointed chief judge. There are photos of you being sworn in. The Attorney General was there. A senator spoke at your investiture. Senator Warren, I said quietly. She was very kind. We weren't there. Mom's voice broke completely. You were sworn in as a federal judge and we weren't there. I didn't invite you. Why not? Because I didn't think you'd come. And I didn't want to spend one of the most important days of my life wondering if you'd show up, or if you'd spend the whole ceremony wishing Sarah was the one taking the oath. I heard her crying. Soft shocked sounds. Your father wants to talk to you, she said. I'm sure he does. But I have work to finish. Elena, please. I'll talk to you later, Mom. I hung up. 20 minutes later, Sarah called. I didn't answer. She texted, we need to talk. Then you let us think you were nobody. Then, David's mother thinks I'm a spoiled brat. He asked why we exclude you. I look like an idiot. I turned off my phone. Saturday morning, someone knocked on my townhouse door. I opened it to find Judge Margaret Patterson standing on my front step, holding 2 cups of coffee. I hope I'm not intruding, she said. I got your address from the court directory. I wanted to check on you. I stepped aside to let her in. We sat in my living room. She handed me one of the coffees. It was from Thinking Cup, my favorite place, prepared exactly how I liked it. She'd done her research. Friday's dinner was eventful, she said. I heard. Your mother called me this morning. She wanted to apologize for any misrepresentation. She seemed quite shocked. That sounds right. Margaret sipped her coffee. Sarah was less apologetic. She seemed primarily concerned with how this reflected on her. She asked me not to judge her based on a family misunderstanding. I almost smiled. David, however, Margaret continued, was furious. At his fiancée, at your parents, at the entire situation. He said some things that needed to be said. He didn't need to do that. No. But he wanted to. He's a good man, Elena. He doesn't like cruelty, even when it's dressed up as family dynamics. We sat in silence for a moment. My sister called me this morning too, Margaret said. The one who told everyone I was a diversity hire. She wanted to congratulate me on being mentioned in the Boston Globe this week. Apparently we made the news for our joint case management approach on Whitmore. What did you say? I thanked her. And then I reminded her that the last time we spoke, she'd suggested I only got my position because of quotas and politics. I asked if she remembered saying that. Did she? Oh yes, she remembered. She tried to claim it was a joke that I'd misunderstood. Margaret's expression hardened. I told her that jokes are meant to be funny, and there was nothing funny about spending a decade trying to earn respect from someone who was determined to never give it. Did she apologize? Eventually. After I explained that I'd be happy to rebuild our relationship, but only if she was ready to actually see me as I am, not as she wanted me to be. She met my eyes. I told her the door wasn't locked. But it had a lock now and I was the one holding the key. I understood what she was telling me. They want to see you, Margaret said gently. Your parents, Sarah. They want to apologize, to explain, to fix this. Do they want to fix it? Or do they want to fix how it looks? That's the question, isn't it? She finished her coffee. For what it's worth, your mother sounded genuinely devastated. Your father too. But Sarah, she paused. Sarah was more concerned with managing David's perception of the situation than with how you might feel. That also sounds right. Margaret stood. You don't owe them anything, Elena. Not your time, not your forgiveness, not an explanation. What you've built, your career, your reputation, your integrity, you did that yourself. They weren't there for any of it. No, I agreed. They weren't. But if you decide you want to try, she pulled a card from her purse and set it on my coffee table. I know an excellent family therapist. She specializes in adult family dynamics and boundary setting. She's helped me navigate my own complicated family relationships. I picked up the card. Dr. Lisa Chin, licensed family therapist. And Elena? Margaret smiled. David wants to have lunch with you. Just the two of you. He said he'd like to get to know his future sister-in-law without your family's narrative clouding the introduction. He doesn't have to do that. He wants to. And honestly, I think you'd like him. He's smart, kind, and he has very little patience for people who mistake cruelty for sophistication. After she left, I sat with the card in my hand for a long time. Sunday afternoon, I turned my phone back on. 43 missed calls. 67 text messages. 3 voicemails. I listened to the first voicemail. Dad's voice, rough with emotion. "Elena, sweetheart, please call us back. We had no idea. We're so sorry. Do you want to talk? Please." The second was, "Mom, I can't stop thinking about your swearing in. We should have been there. You should never have felt like you couldn't tell us. Please, honey. Let us explain." The third was Sarah. "Everyone's losing their minds. David's barely speaking to me. Can we just talk about this like adults? I didn't know, okay? How was I supposed to know?" I deleted all 3. Then I scrolled through the text messages. Most were variations on the same theme. Shock, apology, requests to talk, explanations of how they'd never meant to make me feel that way. One message stood out. From David, sent late Friday night. "Hi Elena. This is David Patterson. I got your number from Sarah. Hope that's okay. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for how my engagement dinner went down. And I'm sorry for everything that came before it. I'd really like to take you to lunch sometime if you're open to it. No pressure. Just, I'd like to know my future sister-in-law. The real one. Not the version Sarah's been describing." I stared at the message. Then I typed, "Lunch sounds good. How's Tuesday?" His response came immediately. "Perfect. I'll make a reservation. And Elena? My mom told me about the Alvarez case. I'm in corporate law, so organized crime prosecution is way outside my world, but I read the case summary. That was incredible work. Me, thank you. See you Tuesday." Monday morning, I returned to chambers. James had organized my calendar, Caroline had prepared bench briefs for the week's hearings, and my docket was mercifully clear of emergencies. 10 a.m. my assistant buzzed. "Judge, your mother is in the lobby. She doesn't have an appointment. Should I send her up?" Mom appeared in my doorway 5 minutes later. She looked smaller than I remembered, older. She'd been crying, her eyes were red, her makeup imperfect. She stopped when she saw the nameplate on my desk. "The Honorable Elena Rivera, Chief Judge." "May I come in?" she asked quietly. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. She sat looking around my chambers. The floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with law reporters. The framed diplomas, Yale Law Order of the Coif. The photographs on the wall. Me being sworn in as Asa, me with the Attorney General, me at my investiture ceremony with Senator Warren. "It's beautiful," Mom whispered. "Your office. Everything. Thank you. Elena, she stopped, swallowed. "I don't know where to start." "Then don't. I have a hearing in 40 minutes. Please. Just let me say we're sorry. Your father and I. We never meant to make you feel invisible. But you did. I know. I see that now. Margaret showed us articles about your cases. The Alvarez trial. The securities fraud prosecution that changed federal precedent. The judicial ethics paper you published in the Harvard Law Review." Her voice cracked. "You've done extraordinary things and we missed all of it." I said nothing. "Why didn't you tell us?" she asked. "Really tell us. Make us listen." I tried, Mom. For years. You weren't interested in listening. We were proud of Sarah. I know. You made that very clear. But we're proud of you too. Now, I interrupted. You're proud now. Because Judge Margaret Patterson, someone you wanted to impress, validated my worth. But before that, when it was just me trying to share my accomplishments, you couldn't be bothered to listen. She flinched. Your father suggested I get an MBA, I continued. A fresh start. Because clearly what I was doing wasn't good enough. He didn't know. Exactly. He didn't know because he never asked. Neither of you did. Sarah told you I was forgettable and you believed her. Because it was easier than asking questions. Mom wiped her eyes. What can we do to fix this? I don't know if you can. Elena. No, I mean it. I don't know. This isn't something you can fix with an apology and a promise to do better. This is 9 years of erasure. 9 years of feeling invisible in my own family. 9 years of watching you celebrate Sarah's every minor achievement while dismissing my entire career. We want to try, Mom said desperately. Please. Let us try. I looked at her for a long moment. I'm having lunch with David tomorrow, I said finally. Your future son-in-law. He wants to get to know me without the family narrative. That's good. After that, maybe we can talk. All of us. With a family therapist present. Someone who can help us navigate this productively. We'll do that. Whatever you need. But Mom, I met her eyes. The door's not locked. But it has a lock now. And I'm the one who decides when and if it opens. Do you understand? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I need you to leave now. I have work to do. She stood slowly. At the door she turned back. I love you, Elena. I know I haven't shown it. But I do. I know, I said. But love without respect isn't enough. Not anymore. After she left, I sat very still. Then I returned to my briefs. Tuesday's lunch with David was easier than I expected. We met at a quiet restaurant in Back Bay. He was tall, kind-faced, exactly the kind of man I'd imagined Sarah would choose. Successful, well-dressed, safe. But he was also sharper than I'd anticipated. Sarah told me you were difficult, he said after we'd ordered. That you didn't really fit with the family. That it was better to keep you at arm's length. That sounds like her. She made it sound like you were the problem. Like you'd rejected them, not the other way around. It's complicated. Is it? He leaned forward. Because from where I'm sitting it seems pretty simple. They didn't value you, so you stopped trying to be valued. I smiled despite myself. Your mother said you were direct. My mother raised me to recognize cruelty, even when it's dressed up as family loyalty. He paused. I'm angry at Sarah. For how she's treated you. For how she's talked about you. You don't need to be angry on my behalf. Maybe not. But I am anyway. He sipped his water. I told her that if we're going to get married she needs to figure out how to actually see you. Not the version of you she's invented to make herself feel superior. The real you. How did she take that? Not well. She said I was being manipulated by my mother. That you'd somehow tricked us into thinking you were more important than you are. I felt my jaw tighten. I told her that federal judges don't trick people into thinking they're federal judges. The appointment process is pretty transparent. He smiled slightly. She didn't appreciate the logic. We talked for 2 hours. About law, about family, about the strange dynamics that arise when people choose comfort over truth. David was good company, smart, thoughtful, genuinely curious about my work. As we were leaving he said, I meant what I said, Elena. I want you in our lives. Really in our lives. Not as the disappointment Sarah's been describing, but as my sister-in-law. As family. Even if that makes things complicated with Sarah? Especially if it makes things complicated with Sarah. She needs to learn that you can't build a real relationship on erasure and dismissal. I hugged him. Brief, genuine. Thank you, I said. For what? For seeing me. The family therapy sessions started 3 weeks later. Dr. Chen's office was in Cambridge, warm and carefully neutral. The first session was just me and my parents. Sarah refused to attend. It was brutal. Honest. Necessary. Dad cried when I explained what it felt like to be introduced as the disappointment at family gatherings. Mom broke down describing her own insecurities, how Sarah's success had felt achievable, relatable, while my accomplishments felt too big to understand, easier to dismiss than to engage with. I didn't know how to talk about a federal judge, Mom admitted. It felt intimidating. Like you'd become someone I couldn't reach. So you decided not to try? I decided it was easier to pretend you were someone smaller. Someone I could understand. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was truth. We scheduled more sessions. Committed to monthly dinners, just the 3 of us. Small steps. Careful boundaries. Sarah came to the 4th session. Defensive, angry, convinced she was the victim of some conspiracy to make her look bad. Dr. Chen was patient. Relentless. By the end of the hour, Sarah was crying, finally admitting that she'd built her identity on being the successful daughter, the valuable one, and my actual success threatened that entire narrative. I needed you to be less, she whispered. So I could be more. It was the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. We weren't fixed. Not even close. But we were finally real with each other. 6 months later, I stood in my chambers on a Friday afternoon. The week had been long. A contentious securities trial, 3 emergency injunction hearings, a settlement conference that had run past midnight. I was exhausted. Satisfied. Exactly where I was supposed to be. My phone buzzed. A text from David. Sarah wants to know if you'll come to the wedding planning meeting tomorrow. No pressure. But she asked me to ask you personally. I looked out my window at Boston Harbor. Ships moving slowly across gray water. The city I'd served for 16 years, as a prosecutor, as a judge, as chief judge. The city that knew exactly who I was. Me, I'll be there. David, thank you. Really. I set down my phone and picked up the next brief. Because here's what I'd learned. I didn't need my family's approval to be whole. I didn't need their recognition to validate my worth. I'd built a career, a reputation, a life that stood entirely independent of their perception. But I also learned this. The door wasn't locked. It had a lock now. A good one. Strong. And I was the one who held the key. When I was ready, if I was ready, I could choose to open it. On my terms. With my boundaries. With the absolute certainty that I was enough, exactly as I was, whether they ever understood that or not. I'd spent 9 years hiding from my family because it was easier than fighting for recognition I should never have had to earn. Now I wasn't hiding anymore. Not because they'd finally seen me, but because I'd finally stopped needing them to. I felt free. And that freedom, the kind that comes from choosing yourself, from setting your own terms, from knowing your worth independent of anyone's validation, that was worth everything they'd cost me. The door wasn't locked. But it would never again open without my permission.